Tonight, Queensland is being inundated and we're being warned there's much more rain on the way. From Bundaberg to the border, we're bracing for extreme weather conditions resembling a Category 1 cyclone. We have reporters live across the southeast. Catherine Foran begins our coverage from the Gold Coast. Catherine, residents there are on high alert.
That's right, Adam, particularly for those living along Talibudra and Currumbin Creeks, and that's because more heavy rainfall is forecast for our hinterland tonight, and that is expected to flow down into these areas. In fact, authorities believe we could see up to 300 millimetres of rain across the Gold Coast tonight, and for that reason they're urging every Gold Coast resident to be vigilant, saying that we need to take extra precautions. This, of course, comes after a solid 24 hours of rainfall around our city. From the coast to the hinterland, Mother Nature unleashed, and there's much more on the way.
Whilst this is not a cyclone, many of the impacts from this weather event will be similar to a Category 1 cyclone event.
The weather event is not over yet. Matter of fact, we're only halfway through.
Springbrook today didn't pull any punches. A thundering Perlingbrook Falls in 24 hours recording 475 millimetres of rain, most of that falling in just 6 hours.
We've had a couple of events in between now and Cyclone Debbie, but yeah, it's probably the heaviest we've seen since then.
378 millimetres recorded at Currumbin, 166 at Coolangatta, while the Gold Coast Seaway saw almost 100 millimetres. A storm surge coupled with wild and woolly waves inundating the car park at Currumbin Surf Club and pushing a catamaran over the top of a small yacht on the Broadwater.
Here they go.
Marine Rescue finally managing to drag the two vessels apart. The yacht left looking worse for wear.
I think they've separated them now. Gee, look at his mast.
A hazardous surf warning remains in place. Waves of up to 7 metres have been recorded off the Gold Coast and wind gusts of up to 81 kilometres an hour.
It's crazy. I just came up from Sydney for a few days and yeah.
Localised flooding closing roads. Theme park Movie World looking more like Wet and Wild. Trees coming down, blocking lanes and bringing down power lines. This gum hanging precariously across lanes of traffic on the M1 at Nerang. While in Mudraba, fish in the street.
Swimming up Somerset Drive.
In preparation for what's to come, sandbagging stations have opened. Residents, particularly around Talibudra and Currumbin Creeks, told to be alert but not to panic.
Potentially, we will have to go and knock on the door and evacuate.
While just over the border, flash flooding saw drivers take unnecessary risks.
The roads are going to be slippery and dangerous and that chance of floodwaters, so we urge you to keep off the roads.
But amongst it all, a moment of light humour.
Michael's saving our backyard.
Tackling the drenching one bucket at a time. Catherine Foran, 9 News.
The start of the wild weather has caused a barge loaded with people from Macleay Island to run aground, leaving dozens stranded aboard for hours as they wait for the tide to come back in.
Just 100 metres from Redland Bay, the Sea-Link barge ran aground around 1 o'clock. Wild seas and strong winds pushing it onto a mudflat.
We were just nearly at the door and a big wind came in and pushed the barge on top and it stuck.
Leaving roughly 24 cars packed with passengers like 8 months pregnant Tammy Weiss stuck in their vehicles for hours.
It's super frustrating. Like, we've got a car full of kids. I'm 8 months pregnant. There's lots of people on who don't have food.
Some took it better than others.
There's guys having beers.
The skipper's only solution.
We were all wondering what was happening, waiting, and finally they came and told us that we have to wait for the tide to come in.
The wait made all the worse by the strengthening weather system, battering the Redlands coastline, stretching 335 kilometres, the local SES churning out hundreds of sandbags every hour. Preparing for the worst.
This will be a significant event.
But hoping for the best.
Rather be safe than sorry.
We're expecting quite a lot of rain and a lot of wind. Rough seas as well.
The Bureau predicting king tides which could cause significant coastal erosion. Beenleigh copped 71 millimetres overnight, Logan 62 millimetres, Rochdale 54. Across Brisbane, the rainfall was more sporadic, intense at times and then drizzle.
Up in Brisbane, we only saw between 20 to 40 millimetres.
But the low pressure system is expected to intensify in the next 12 to 24 hours, delivering heavy rainfall and potentially flash flooding.
People that do live in low-lying areas or near creeks that have been subject to flooding in the past obviously need to be alert.
The SES received 456 calls for help overnight, many of them from residents in Logan and here in Springfield Lakes for leaking roofs, still recovering from one of the worst hailstorms in the region's history. For the past 2 nights, it's been raining both outside and inside the Reggie house.
You've got rain on your roof or water on your
All
roof.
the mattress beds is all wet.
The family hoping some last-minute sandbags help batten down the hatches.
That's why we are covering now. We are expecting that storm is coming again.
Shannon Marshall McCormack, 9 News.
And straight to Shannon Marshall McCormack now. Shannon, is that barge still stuck?
Adam, no, just in the last 10 to 15 minutes, a crew has actually used a rope to tie from the pier here to the Stradbroke Venture, which you can now see behind me. They've used that to wiggle free, and they've actually now just come into the port and disembarked. Speaking of the high tide that is now starting to come back in, we are expecting to see a king tide early tomorrow morning as these tides get even higher. The wind is just buffeting me right now. We are expecting a tide higher than any other at any other time of the year. So if you're in a low-lying area or if you have a car parked near the coastline, keep it away because those swells are expected to be big. The waves could come in far.
Yeah, really tough conditions. Shannon, thank you. Well, this system's also smashed the Sunshine Coast. One man getting trapped in rising waters. Tonight, he's in a critical condition in hospital.
Inside this ambulance, there's a man in his 20s fighting for life. Pulled from a car that drove into a dam on this Diddillabah property in the Sunshine Coast hinterland. 2 others inside uninjured. The trio said to have been caught off guard by rising water. Waterfalls. Mount Coolum doesn't usually have them. But today it did. Trampolines don't usually fly, but this image from Alexandra Headland, taken as one took off, proves otherwise. Signs of just how much rain is falling and just how wild this weather really is. The Sunshine Coast, certainly not living up to its name. Well, this is the view from Point Arkwright here at Coolum, and I know it's a cliche, but it is quite literally raining sideways, and that is because of these 80-kilometre-an-hour gusts that have been coming through. Quickly take a look out here, some 300 metres offshore. The waves are actually breaking. Locals telling us today they've quite simply never seen that before.
I probably wouldn't go out for a swim or on a boat.
Unrelenting. Unstoppable, but some were unafraid.
It's been a while since I've seen it this bad, to be honest, like it's solid.
Young Ollie, on the other hand, taking the wind-swept look to a whole new level. Trees fell, power lines cut, roads shut. This just an entree to the main meal on its way. Well, conditions are continuing to get worse and worse longer this day rolls on, most notably the wind. Wind gusts recorded about 100 kilometres per hour at the Sunshine Coast Airport, and the swell too, as you can see, is building. Some kids, call them brave, call them silly, they are enjoying seemingly this really big swell that's continuing to lash the Sunshine Coast. Adam, it is expected to peak tomorrow morning at around that 5-metre mark.
Extraordinary. Alex, thank you. Well, straight to Ebony Cavallaro now. Ebony, just how much rain can we expect tonight?
Well, Adam, we can really expect anywhere between 200 to 300 millimetres to fall overnight, and that could fall anywhere between about Hervey Bay to northern New South Wales. Now, for some areas like the Gold Coast hinterland, it means they could get exactly what they've had last night, already copping a drenching, about the same amount tonight. So a pretty huge amount expected there. Now, if we take a look at the radar as to what's happening right now, what we can actually see is pretty much a blanket of blue across the southeast. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be heavy at times tonight before things start to ease just a little bit tomorrow. A weather warning will remain in place while all that rain moves through. But if we look at the next few days, well, the system will start to weaken a little bit from tomorrow afternoon and will start to move south. So we'll start to see things change from there. But when will we be able to hang out the washing? Well, Adam, it's certainly not going to be in the next day or so, but I'll have all the details a little bit later in the weather report.
Chat to you soon. Thanks, Ebony.